What if the very thing that once saved you is now the thing that's slowly drowning you? Think about it. That relationship you keep replaying. That grudge you can't release. That version of yourself you're desperately trying to hold on to. These things helped you survive once. They carried you through difficult waters. But now they've become weights you carry everywhere, on your shoulders, in your chest, through every waking moment. Over 2,500 years ago, the Buddha told a simple story about a man who built a raft to cross a river. The raft saved his life. But what he did next changed everything. Today, you'll learn the ancient secret of letting go without losing yourself. Stay with me. Part 1: The Buddha's Raft, a timeless parable on letting go. Long ago, the Buddha was teaching a group of monks in a quiet grove. The air was still. The monks sat in silence, eager to receive wisdom. The Buddha looked at them with compassion and began to speak. Imagine a man on a long journey. He has traveled for many miles through forests and mountains. His clothes are worn. His feet are tired. But he keeps walking because he knows there is somewhere better ahead. One day, he comes to a vast body of water. On this side of the shore, there is danger, wild animals lurking in the shadows, harsh weather, uncertainty at every turn. But across the water, on the distant shore, he can see safety. He can see peace. He can see the possibility of a new beginning. There is no bridge. There is no boat waiting for him. The water is deep, and the current is strong. So what does he do? He doesn't give up. He doesn't turn back. Instead, he gathers what he can find: branches, leaves, vines, pieces of wood. With patience and determination, he begins to build a raft. It takes time. His hands grow tired. But he doesn't stop. Eventually, the raft is ready. He climbs aboard and begins to paddle. The current pushes against him. The journey is difficult. There are moments when he wonders if he will make it. But the raft holds steady. It carries him through the dangerous waters, through the uncertainty, through the fear. And finally, he reaches the other shore. He steps onto dry land. He breathes deeply. He looks around at the safety he has found. He made it. Then he looks back at the raft. This raft saved his life. Without it, he would have drowned. Without it, he would still be trapped on the dangerous shore. He feels deep gratitude for what this raft has done. And so a thought arises. This raft has been so useful to me. It carried me across dangerous waters when nothing else could. I cannot simply leave it here on the shore. That would be ungrateful. That would be wasteful. So he decides, I will lift this raft onto my head. I will carry it with me wherever I go. I will never let it go. The Buddha paused. He looked at his monks with gentle eyes. Then he asked, Tell me, would this man be acting wisely? The monks shook their heads. By carrying this raft on his head for the rest of his journey, is he honoring the raft, or burdening himself? Is he showing gratitude, or creating new suffering? The answer was clear. The raft was never meant to be carried forever. It was meant to be used, and then, with gratitude, released. The Buddha then spoke these words, which echo through the centuries. In the same way, I have taught the Dharma as being like a raft, for the purpose of crossing over, not for the purpose of holding on to. When you understand that even the Dharma is like a raft, you should let go of the Dharma, how much more so of things that are not the Dharma. Pause here. Let that sink in. Let the weight of those words settle into your heart. The Buddha wasn't just talking about a raft. He was talking about everything you carry. Every belief that once protected you but now limits you. Every relationship that once nourished you but now drains you. Every identity you built to survive a situation you've already survived. Every coping mechanism that helped you through the storm, but now keeps you from seeing the clear sky above. Every story you tell yourself about who you must be, what you must have, how things must go. The raft is not bad. The raft served its purpose beautifully. But the journey continues. And you cannot walk freely on new land while carrying a raft on your head. Part 2, When the Raft Becomes the Burden, a Modern Story. Let me share with you a story that might feel painfully familiar. There was a woman named Grace. For 15 years, Grace poured everything she had into her marriage. She was devoted beyond measure. She was patient when patience seemed impossible. She was the one who always tried to make things work, staying up late to talk through problems, swallowing her own needs to keep the peace, believing that if she just loved harder, everything would be okay. Even when her husband grew distant. Even when conversations became arguments. Even when she began to feel invisible in her own home. She held on. She told herself, this is what commitment means. This is what real love requires. I cannot give up on us. The marriage was her raft. It had carried her through loneliness in her 20s. It had given her identity, purpose, and a sense of belonging. It had been her safety when the world felt uncertain. But somewhere along the way, the waters changed. The raft that once carried her began to sink. And Grace didn't notice, or perhaps she noticed but refused to see. When the divorce finally came, not by her choice, not on her terms, Grace was devastated. Not just sad. Not just disappointed. Shattered. She felt like she had lost not just a husband, but herself. Who was she without this marriage? What was her purpose now? Everything she had built her identity upon was crumbling. She stopped sleeping well. She stopped eating properly. She lost weight, not from health, but from grief. She replayed every conversation in her mind, wondering what she could have done differently. If only she had been more understanding. If only she had been less demanding. If only, if only, if only. Months passed. Then a year. Then 2 years. The divorce was finalized. Her ex-husband moved on, started a new relationship, and seemed happy. But Grace remained frozen. Her friends gently encouraged her to move forward. Her children, now teenagers, needed her presence, not her grief. New opportunities appeared, a job offer in another city, an invitation to travel with old friends, people who wanted to know her. But Grace couldn't see any of it. Because she was still standing at the riverbank, clutching a raft that had already served its purpose. She wasn't grieving the marriage anymore, not really. She was grieving her attachment to who she thought she was supposed to be. She was mourning a version of life that no longer existed. She was carrying a raft that was only weighing her down. One evening, Grace sat alone in her quiet living room. The house felt too big. The silence felt too loud. She picked up a book someone had given her months ago, a small collection of Buddhist teachings she had never opened. She didn't know why she reached for it that night. Perhaps she was desperate. Perhaps she was ready. She opened to a random page. And there, in simple words, she found the parable of the raft. She read it once. Then again. Then a third time. Then she closed the book and sat in complete silence. Something shifted inside her. Not dramatically. Not with fireworks or sudden clarity. But something loosened. Something that had been gripped tight for years began, ever so slightly, to relax. She realized. The marriage had been her raft. It had carried her through certain waters of life. It had served a real and important purpose. But those waters were behind her now. She had already crossed to the other side. She just hadn't allowed herself to step onto the new shore. She had been so busy mourning the raft that she forgot she was already standing on solid ground. That night, Grace made a quiet decision. She wouldn't forget the marriage. She wouldn't pretend those 15 years didn't matter. They were real. They shaped her. They gave her beautiful children and important lessons. But she would stop carrying the raft. She would honor what was, without letting it imprison what could be. She would set it down gently, with gratitude for what it gave her, and continue walking forward. And slowly, day by day, Grace began to heal. Not by forcing herself to get over it. Not by pretending she was fine when she wasn't. But by allowing herself to simply release and walk on. If you've been finding comfort in this message, I invite you to subscribe to Buddha Coha and turn on notifications. Here, we share timeless Buddhist wisdom for modern life, stories and teachings that help you find peace in a chaotic world. Your subscription helps us continue spreading these messages of healing and awakening. Now, let's go deeper into the heart of attachment. Part 3: Why we hold on, attachment as the root of suffering. Why is it so hard to let go? Why do we cling to relationships that have clearly ended? To expectations that will never be met? To versions of ourselves that no longer exist? Why do we keep carrying rafts that are breaking our backs? The Buddha gave us a clear answer over 2,500 years ago. The root of suffering is attachment. Not love. Not caring. No connection. Attachment. There is a profound difference. Love says, I appreciate you as you are, in this moment. Attachment says, I need you to be a certain way for me to be okay. Love says, I hope for this outcome, and I will work toward it with my whole heart. Attachment says, I must have this outcome, or I will fall apart completely. Love says, I cherish what we shared, and I'm grateful for it. Attachment says, I cannot exist without what we shared. Without it, I am nothing. Do you see the difference? Love is open-handed. Attachment is a closed fist. Attachment is the grip that refuses to open, even when what you're holding is hurting you. It's the clenched hand that believes holding tighter will somehow prevent loss. But here's the truth the Buddha understood deeply. Everything in this life is impermanent. Everything arises, exists for a time, and passes away. This is not pessimism. This is reality. This is the nature of all things. The people you love will change. Some will leave. Some will disappear. This is not a tragedy to resist. It is the nature of existence. The situations you're in will shift. What feels permanent today will transform tomorrow. This is not chaos to fear, it is the rhythm of life itself. The person you are right now is not the person you were 10 years ago, and not the person you will be 10 years from now. This is not loss of identity, it is the beautiful, natural process of growth. When we resist this truth, we suffer. When we cling to what was, we miss what is. When we demand that life stay frozen in a single moment, we turn living into a prison of our own making. The Dhammapada teaches, those who are free of attachment and aversion, who have cut through the bonds of craving, they alone walk freely in this world. Think about what you're attached to right now. Be honest with yourself. Is it a person's approval that you desperately seek? Is it a specific outcome that must happen? Is it a memory you replay endlessly? Is it a grudge you refuse to release? Is it the need to be right? Is it the need to be understood? Is it the need for things to be fair? Whatever it is, ask yourself these questions. Is this attachment adding to my peace, or stealing from it? Is holding on to this making me stronger, or keeping me trapped? If I release this attachment, what would I lose? And what might I gain? Remember, the attachment is not the thing itself. You can love someone deeply without being attached to how they treat you. You can work toward a goal passionately without being attached to a specific timeline. You can cherish a memory without being imprisoned by it. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop suffering over what you cannot control. Part 4, The Illusion of Control, and Where True Power Lies. Here's a truth that might be uncomfortable to hear. You control far less than you think. You cannot control how others feel about you. You can be kind, honest, generous, and loving, and someone will still misunderstand you. Someone will still judge you unfairly. Someone will still walk away without explanation. You cannot control the timing of life. You can work hard, plan carefully, and do everything right, and things will still unfold on their own mysterious schedule. Doors will open when they open. Seeds will bloom when they're ready, not when you demand them to. You cannot control other people's choices. You can love someone with your whole heart, and they can still choose to leave. You can offer forgiveness, and they can still choose bitterness. You can show up fully, vulnerably, honestly, and they can still look the other way. This might sound discouraging, but actually, it's the doorway to freedom. Because once you stop trying to control the uncontrollable, you reclaim all the energy you were wasting on an impossible task. Think about how exhausting it is to constantly manage other people's perceptions of you. Think about the mental gymnastics required to try to control every outcome. Think about the anxiety that comes from trying to make life follow your script. It's exhausting. It's impossible. And the attempt itself is what drains your peace. The Buddha said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." True power doesn't lie in controlling external circumstances. True power lies in mastering your internal responses. You cannot control the storm, but you can learn to stay steady while it rages around you. You cannot control what others do or say, but you can choose how much of your peace you give away. You cannot control the river of life, but you can build a raft, use it wisely, and know when to set it down on the shore. This is where freedom begins. Not in having power over life, but in having power over yourself. Part 5. The Art of Letting Go, Detachment as an Active Practice. Some people misunderstand detachment. They think it means giving up, becoming cold, not caring anymore, building walls around your heart. But that's not detachment. That's avoidance. That's numbness. That's another form of suffering, wearing a different mask. True detachment is not passive, it's active. It requires awareness, patience, and tremendous courage. It's not about pushing things away with force. It's about holding them loosely, gently. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about caring without losing yourself in the caring. It's not about having no emotions. It's about not being controlled and defined by your emotions. The Zen tradition teaches, let go, or be dragged. Simple words. Profound truth. But how do you actually let go? How do you practice this in real life? Let me offer you a practice, something simple you can begin today. First, notice what you're carrying. Before you can set something down, you must become aware that you're holding it. Pay attention to your thoughts throughout the day. What do you keep returning to? What mental loops keep playing on repeat? What name, what situation, what memory keeps arising uninvited? That's your raft. It's not good or bad, just something to notice with curiosity and compassion. Second, question the attachment. Ask yourself honestly, is this still serving me, or is it weighing me down? Was this ever truly mine to control? What am I afraid will happen if I let this go? Often, we hold on because we fear that releasing means forgetting. That moving forward means what happened didn't matter. But that's not true. You can honor something completely and still release it. You can be grateful for a chapter and still turn the page. Third, practice releasing in small moments. Detachment is like a muscle. It grows stronger with regular practice. Start small. Start today. When someone cuts you off in traffic, breathe deeply and let the irritation go. When a plan falls through unexpectedly, notice your frustration, acknowledge it, then gently release it. When someone doesn't respond to your message, observe any anxiety that arises, then consciously choose peace anyway. Every small release prepares you for the bigger ones that life will inevitably bring. Fourth, return to the present moment. Attachment lives in the past and the future. It replays what was. It worries about what might be. But the present moment is always free. Right here, right now, in this breath, you are okay. Right here, right now, you are not defined by what happened or what might happen. Right here, right now, you can simply be, complete, whole, at peace. The Buddha taught, do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future, concentrate the mind on the present moment. This is where peace lives. This is where freedom breathes. This is where you can finally set down the raft. Part 6. Emotional Independence, Becoming Untouchable. There's a state that wise practitioners speak of. A state where your inner peace is no longer dependent on external circumstances. Where praise doesn't inflate you, and criticism doesn't crush you. Where you can love deeply, fully, completely, without being destroyed by loss. Where you can engage wholeheartedly with life without being imprisoned by outcomes. This is emotional independence. This is becoming untouchable, not in a cold, distant way, but in a free, open-hearted way. The third Zen patriarch wrote, "The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. When love and hate are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised." This doesn't mean you become emotionless or indifferent. It means emotions pass through you like weather, arising, existing, and dissolving naturally, without defining who you are. Anger may come, but you don't become angry. Sadness may visit, but you don't become sad. Fear may knock on the door of your heart, but you don't have to let it move in permanently. You become like the sky. Clouds pass through constantly, dark clouds, bright clouds, stormy clouds. But the sky itself remains vast, open, unchanged. You become like the ocean. Waves rise and fall endlessly on the surface. But in the depths, there is always stillness. This is not something you achieve once and possess forever. It's a practice. A daily return. A gentle, patient, compassionate practice of coming back to your center whenever you drift away. And you will drift away. That's human. That's natural. The practice is simply to return, again and again, without judgment. Part 7, Wisdom for the Journey, Words to Carry with You. As we come to the end of our time together, I want to leave you with some words of wisdom from those who have walked this path before us. Not as another raft to carry on your head, but as signposts along the way, pointing toward freedom. Listen to them. Reflect on them. Let them touch your heart. And when they've served their purpose, let them go too. The Buddha said, "In the end, only 3 things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you." Thich Nhat Hanh wrote, "Letting go gives us freedom, and freedom is the only condition for happiness. If, in our heart, we still cling to anything, anger, anxiety, or possessions, we cannot be free." Pema Chodron teaches, "You are the sky. Everything else, it's just the weather." And from the ancient Dhammapada, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. Lao Tzu reminds us, "When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be." These are not just beautiful words for contemplation. They are invitations to transformation. Invitations to live differently. To respond rather than react. To release rather than grip. To flow rather than fight against the current. Closing, the shore is already beneath your feet. So here you are. You've heard the parable of the raft and the man who couldn't let go. You've walked alongside Grace as she learned to release what was never meant to be carried forever. You've reflected on what you hold and why you hold it so tightly. Now comes the gentle question. What raft are you still clutching? What served you beautifully once but serves you no longer? What are you truly, finally ready to set down? I'm not asking you to do this perfectly. I'm not asking you to let go of everything all at once. I'm not asking you to pretend it's easy when it's not. I'm simply inviting you to begin. One conscious breath at a time. One honest thought at a time. One small, courageous release at a time. Remember the man in the Buddha's story. The raft was never the destination. It was only the vehicle to get him there. And he had already made it across. The shore was already beneath his feet. He just needed to trust it enough to stand. You are stronger than your attachments want you to believe. You are deeper than your circumstances suggest. You are more peaceful than your anxious mind allows you to feel. And you are ready, right now, in this very moment, to reclaim your freedom. So take a deep breath. Feel your feet solidly on the ground. Feel the shore that's already holding you. And when you're ready, gently, gratefully, courageously, set the raft down. Honor it for what it gave you. And walk on into the life that's waiting for you. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for your open heart and willing spirit. If this message touched something in you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Buddha Coha so we can continue walking this path together. Leave a comment and tell me, what raft are you ready to set down? And always remember, every single moment is a fresh chance to begin again. May you be peaceful. May you be happy. May you be free. May you carry only what serves you, and release all that does not.